Okay, this house is way too big. I feel like we've been walking for months. I'm pretty sure I've missed at least one set that's come out already.
Your priorities are truly in order.
Thanks. I knew you'd understand, Veronica. Now let's go find Gruff and Lyris before... Ah! Lucy, don't go after her now. The house has her now. It has all of us. Now I know how that coyote feels.
Hello, little fly. Welcome to my web. Would you like to play a game?
Oh, definitely. I think I've got one of my decks around here somewhere. Do you have 2 other players?
No, I am not talking about your silly game of commanders and magic.
Oh, you're more of a standard kind of guy. Sure thing. I think I've got a spicy heir apparent deck somewhere around here.
Standard? Even I am not that cruel.
Hey, standard is pretty good right now. Who are you anyway?
I am the Lord of Pain, and I brought you here to torture you.
Oh, well that doesn't sound very nice.
I am not nice. I am the Lord of Pain.
I'm starting to think this might not be the fun kind of haunted house.
Now that I have you here, I'm going to force you to analyze new commanders from Magic the Gathering Foundations.
Oh? Well, that doesn't sound too bad.
And post those opinions onto the internet!
No! Wait a minute. I do that all the time. And hey, I think the new Foundation commanders are super cool, and I want to take a look at all of them. That surely can't take that long, right? There's only 11 of them? Okay, so I probably won't be able to spend as much time as a full video as I normally do on each of them, but I'll try to give it my best shot. Without further ado, let's start the show. First up, we've got Arabo, the First Fang. The king of all cats lost green and a little bit of weight, only being 2 and a white for a 2/2 now, but this cat avatar still packs a punch. He gives all the other cats in your team +1/+1 and makes you a 1/1 cat token for each time he or another cat enters, making your cat army massive quickly. Now my first instinct was, why would I play the not super busted version of Arabo when the busted one gives me another color and a cool ability in the command zone and the ability to play a really cool companion? Well, one reason is the fact that Arabo, the First Fang, can both pump all of your cats and give you more cats all in one creature. The original Arabo needs you to have a board and only gives you a buff on one single attacking cat, which can easily be removed. While having a free effect in the command zone is solid, having a cheaper commander that helps you go wide might just be worth giving up green. Next up is Kiora, the Rising Tide. Kiora has lived through the Phyrexian invasion and losing her spark, but she's still bringing out massive monsters of the deep. Scions of the Deep specifically, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Kiora is 2 and a blue for a 3/2 Merfolk Noble that lets you draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards upon entering. The spicy part of her ability happens after you get 7 cards in the graveyard though. Once you do, and Kiora attacks, you make an 8/8 legendary token called Scion of the Deep. It's really easy to get that threshold between Surveil effects, Kiora's own ability, or even fetch lands. Remember, even if you're playing mono blue, you can play fetch lands like Scalding Tarn or Polluted Delta. You would only be getting basic islands with them, or island sanctuaries if you want to be extra spicy, but you know, it's still an option. And of course, you can only have 1 Scion of the Deep, which is very unfortunate. But it's not like there's any way to ignore the legend rule, right? Right? Stealing his way into the list is Tiny Bones Bauble Burglar. This little skeleton rogue is 1 and a black for a 1/3 with an extremely powerful ability. Whenever an opponent discards a card, they exile it from their graveyard with a stash counter on it. And on top of that, during your turn, you may play cards you don't own with stash counters on them from exile, and, of course, mana of any type can be spent to cast those spells. And if you happen to not have any ways to make that happen, you can pay 3 and a black and tap Tiny Bones to make each opponent discard a card at sorcery speed. Now, there's plenty of ways to make plenty of cards get discarded, but you definitely want to find ways to make sure you're getting extra value out of it. Sangromancer gains you life when your opponents discard cards, Megrim, Liliana's Caress, and Bandit's Talent all make your opponents lose life if they're low on cards, and Waste Not practically does everything you'd ever want. No matter what your opponents discard with Waste Not on the field, you're getting some sort of value, either in the form of creature tokens in the form of 2/2 zombies if your opponents discard creatures, mana if your opponents discard lands, or extra cards if they discard non-creature, non-land cards. And if they do discard lands, you can cast the other cards they discarded with the mana that they just discarded. Value on value on value. As for fun ways to make everyone discard, even though that's kind of an oxymoron, Dark Deal is one of the most popular ways that doesn't just kill your opponents outright. But an important note about Dark Deal is that they do still draw the cards. Tiny Bones exiling the cards is a triggered ability and not a replacement effect, meaning that they do still discard them so that your opponents can draw. The deal is dark, but it's not that evil, you know? On the topic of evil, Tiny Bones makes an excellent disguise for a Tergrid deck due to both of the effects being triggered effects that you can choose to apply. For example, if someone discards 2 permanents and a sorcery, you can take the permanents with Tergrid and then stash away the sorcery for later. But don't do this, you will lose all of your friends. Next up is One Mean Lich. Zulashur Lichlord, that is. She's 1 and a black for a 2/2 legendary zombie warlock with a ward ability to pay 2 life. It's a bit obnoxious, but in Commander, 2 life isn't a huge deal. But zombie decks are all about putting up a bunch of reanimated bodies, so that 2 life could matter in the game. What's really interesting about her is her tap ability. It lets you cast a zombie card from the graveyard for the rest of the turn, which is really powerful but a bit confusing. Some people thought that the wording would let you loop a zombie indefinitely. Unfortunately, that's wrong, even though the ability to recast specific zombies from your graveyard is pretty powerful. Well, why not, I hear you ask? Well, magic cards, like computers, are very dumb. When you target a zombie in the graveyard, it gains the ability to be cast from the graveyard. But once you cast it and put it into play, it's a new object and kind of forgets that it has that ability. You dredge up the spell from the dirt and cast it, but the creature forgets that it can be cast from there, so if it dies again, you can't cast it again from the graveyard unless you have a way to give it that ability again, like if you untap Zool and do the whole rigmarole over again. Basically, she's very powerful, but I don't know if she can dethrone any of the other popular zombie commanders that we have out there, but she's a very powerful tool in those decks. Straight from Thunder Junction is Kellen, Planar Trailblazer. My adoptive son is 1 red for a 2/1 human fairy scout that acts like a figure of destiny. For 1 and a red, he becomes a detective that lets you exile the top card of your library and play it this turn if you deal combat damage with him. And for 2 and a red, he becomes a 3/2 rogue with double strike, as long as he's a detective first. While I adore my son to death, he's not that great in Commander here. He's cheap and can get double strike fairly easily, but it requires a lot of investment to get there, and only being able to be in red makes him a little inflexible. I think he'll do much better in 60 card formats like Standard and maybe Pioneer, but in Commander he probably won't be making too many waves. The last of the new monocolored legendaries is Loot, Exuberant Explorer. The last of the Fomori and the Pikachu of Magic the Gathering is actually a super solid card. For 2 and a green, you get a 1/4 Beast Noble who lets you play an additional land on each of your turns. While that's really good in and of itself, we already have legendaries in the command zone that give us an extra land drops, and those are pretty anime girls, so why would I want to play Loot? Well, he's got a nifty activated ability. For 4 and 2 green, you can tap Loot to look at the top 6 cards of your library and reveal a creature card whose tracts of land are smaller than yours, whose mana value is less than or equal to the number of lands you control, and put it onto the battlefield. Having both ramp and a payoff in the command zone is an extremely powerful ability, and if you can find a way to untap Loot, such as with Instill Energy, Nature's Chosen, or Commander staple Jandor's Saddlebags, you could potentially get multiple activations of this ability.
But that would require 6 mana each time. How do you intend to get all that mana?
Dude, we're in green. We need to find her. We lost Gruff and that robot woman. We can't allow ourselves to be split up again. Oh, I believe I can. What the hells are you talking about? We need to... Ah, you're an opportunist. 4 unwitting pawns fell right into my lap. How could I say no? Now, quiet your mind and allow me to guide you to your new fate. I just got a tingle of dramatic irony. I'm sure it's fine. Next up, we're moving into the multicolored commanders with Kaikar, Zephyr Awakener. Originally in Jeskai, he kind of mellowed out now and is a really cool, blinky, twinky commander. Can I call the Birdman a twink? I saw that on the internets one time. Kaikar is 2, a blue and a white for a 3/4 bird wizard with flying and a really cool ability. If you cast a non-creature spell, you can either make a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying, or you can choose to exile another creature you control and return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next instep. This ability is really flexible and much more versatile than his previous incarnation. However, Kaikar is one of those commanders called in potentia. Basically, you can dictate how much you want to share the fun of the table with this guy. For example, you could run some fun draw spells, maybe a bounce spell or life gain shenanigans while blinking something that gives you a bunch of tokens. Or you could load up on counter spells, instant speed removal, while blinking something like Yorion that blinks your entire board and gives you just an overwhelming amount of advantage. Both are perfectly valid options, but make sure your table knows what you're doing, or you might end up with someone reaching across the table and eating your cards, sleeves and all. No, this isn't a personal anecdote, whatever could you mean? I clearly haven't eaten any of the delicious magic cards ever. Next up, we've got Alinda, Saint of Dusk. This Alinda is beefy, starting as a 4/4 Vampire Knight for 2, a white and a black, with both lifelink and hexproof from instants. That's actually really huge, as a lot of the best single target removal spells in this game are instants, so she's a bit difficult to remove. Now, her real power is in her other ability. If your life total is higher than your starting life total, she has +1/+1 in Menace, and +5/+5 if you're at least 10 above your starting life total. She's sort of like a fixed Sarah Ascendant, growing larger the higher your life total is. She's strong, but you definitely need to build around her. If she's just a 4/4 with lifelink, it'll be a bit easier for your opponents to block her, so you definitely want to be gaining as much life as possible as soon as possible with her. In his third appearance this year alone, we have Niv-Mizzet Visionary. For 4, a blue and a red, you get a flying 5/5 Dragon Wizard who removes your hand size limit, which will be very important soon because of his other ability. It's going to draw you a bunch of cards. Whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, you draw that many cards. Now, I don't need to tell you that this combos with a hand sandwich in like $50. Heck, he even goes infinite with himself. You don't need me to tell you how to build this guy. If you want to go infinite, he can just do it super easily. What you can do is have cards like Sulfuric Vortex and Descent into Avernus to deal damage to everyone and draw cards for it all. Put in some counterspells to protect your damage dealers and try to end the game in a draw. Basically, if you're trying to win properly with this Niv-Mizzet, I think you simply lack vision. We're getting into the big boys now with Koma World Eater. I'm pretty sure he died in the whole Phyrexian invasion thing, but it looks like he got better. Koma is 3, 2 green, and 2 blue for an 8/12 with trample and ward 4 and can't be countered. If he gets any combat damage through to your opponents, he makes 4 3/3 serpents called Koma's Coil. You know, in case you needed more power after hitting somebody for at least some form of 8 damage. Something interesting about this Koma is that he works well in a deck with the previous Koma as well, since he makes more serpents to sacrifice. There's not much else to say on this guy. He's a giant simic monster. Ramp, cast him, attack people, win the game, big smash, unga bunga, just no brain cells, just go. On the other end of the simic brain cells is Simone Paradox Sculptor. She's 2, a blue and a green for a 1/4 human wizard who, at the beginning of combat on your turn, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 creatures you control. That's fine, but the real big brain potential is in her activated ability. For a blue and a green and tapping Simone, you get to double each kind of counter on up to 2 creatures or artifacts you control. While +1/+1 counters is the main way you would do this, choosing one of your creatures and then the Ozolith to double both counters is very, very fun. Simone is at her best, in my opinion, when you're doubling some weird sort of counters. One of the coolest ways to do this is with Darksteel Reactor. For 4 mana, it's an indestructible artifact that gets a charge counter on it during each of your upkeeps. When you have 20 of them, you win the game. Slot in Vorel of the Wholeclade for max reacting. Is it good? No, your entire game plan revolves around the other players not playing Resculpt, but hey, if you pull it off once, I'm pretty sure that means you graduate with honors. Or you get beat up in the parking lot of the LGS, one or the other. Finally, we have the last of 2 legendaries with Alesha, who laughs at fate. Angry Battle Grandma is 1, a black and a red for a 2/2 with first strike who gets +1/+1 counter each time she attacks, which is pretty good, considering she has a raid ability. As long as you've attacked for the turn, you can bring back a creature from the graveyard at the end step as long as its mana value is less than or equal to Alesha's attack. The coolest thing about this ability is that you don't even need to have attacked with Alesha, you just need to have attacked, period. Now, you can keep bringing bigger stuff back if she's getting into the red zone, but still, you don't need to. You can take Alesha in a lot of different ways, from an aristocrat strategy of sacrificing your creatures and bringing them back, and they all have about low power, so you're not really getting Alesha in danger, or pumping up Alesha and bringing back huge monsters over and over and over again. I, personally, fully endorse Alesha fighting for both trans rights and trans wrongs. Wow, those are some really cool commanders. I need to get back to my circus and get to building.
What? I won't be letting you go anytime soon.
Well, that's a little rude. Well, I fell straight up, so if I just jump up, then woo!
What the house just happened? And where did her legs go?
Okay, back to where we were, and I lost Veronica and her friend. Strange woman, thank the gods you're here. Oh, good. Did you see whatever weird, strange, horrific thing took Veronica? I think it's time I wrapped up this weird plotline. I've got places to be. What? No matter. I saw where she was taken. Come with me. Alrighty, lead the way. Right. Come with me. Well, she doesn't seem creepy at all. Well, darlings and deviants, I hope you enjoyed me going over all of the new legendaries and foundations. Which one is your favorite, and have you brewed anything spicy up with them? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thank you all so very much for watching, and until next time, au revoir!